Hello?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Not yet. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think I set up the stream right. It should be on YouTube.
It just popped up that it was gone to live.
Okay.
So
I'm submitting everybody in here now. Okay.
Hey, Doug, is there really a recording in progress?
Yeah, there is actually.
Just us?
Yeah, just us right now. I mean, we have to record the meetings now, so
Understood, yeah.
it's also on live. It's also on live streaming on YouTube as part of our. Just making sure it's working right.
Well, you got me. And Melanie, and Rick,
hello.
and Sarah, and Abby. Boy, we're almost all here. Woohoo.
See who we Tom's not here yet, and Matt's not here, and
Jan.
Martha's not going to make it today.
So
who else?
Jan and Matt.
Oh, Jan, right.
Oh, I like your hair. Mel, it's cute.
Right. I think we're on YouTube too. So that's good. Can you all still hear me?
I can hear.
All right. Okay, here's Tom. All right, he's coming on right now.
Is Tom the last that is going to come?
Yeah, I think if Jan's not on, and I haven't seen her, I think we have enough to start for sure. I hadn't heard. Have you anybody heard from Jan, Mel, or Rick, or Sarah? Okay.
We can give her a minute more. How's that? Or we can just start.
Whatever you'd like.
Well, let's just get on with it because we're the on-time machine. Okay,
Right.
Call to order, 5:03. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes?
Not much.
Okay,
Yeah,
if you'd like- okay, Tom, if you need to go over the minutes right now, give a quick look. You got them? Okay. Did everybody else have a chance to go over them? You can do a thumbs up if you have. Okay, one. Matt, did you get a chance? Matt did, good. Okay, it looks like. Well, Tom, did you get a chance to go over them? Thumbs up, good, okay. So someone like to make approval? Everybody in favor? Approved, good, okay. Agenda review. Has everybody had a chance to go over the agenda?
Yep.
Any changes, comments, additions? Okay, moving right along. We don't have any public people, do we?
well, it could be, we're live.
Well, doesn't look like anybody's here, though.
Well, true.
Nobody requested to from the public to ask any questions. So
Okay.
they may
we
be
can always
viewing
do it at
online,
the
but
end.
nobody asked to make public comments.
Okey doke, we can always do it at the end if someone does so. Then let's on to you, Doug.
Okay. Thank you all for taking some time out of your life today. We'll try to make it short and sweet. We continue to be in the middle of COVID. I think, as you all know, I think we mentioned last time, we're now 7 days a week. We're back almost to the hours we had before. We've extended our hours in the opening on Saturday and Sundays. So instead of opening it at 12, we open at 10 now. And we're not going till 8 o'clock. We're only going till 7 right now on a couple days a week, which is basically some of the, I think we mentioned this before, it's basically because of the trends that we saw before COVID, when people were using the building, and when people asked to be using the building or be able to come in. There seemed to be a real request for people that wanted to come in earlier on Saturdays and Sundays, and so we've been able to adapt that. So, but as far as programming goes, we're still in this place where our 0 to 5, if you will, our pre-K folks, we're still not doing live for lots of reasons, but nobody really in the county is doing story times live, and I don't anticipate we will for a while. We are thinking of changing some of our ideas for programming and for the adults. We have seen quite a few people from our adult side that are participating in our virtual programs, which is great. There's one that's coming up in the coming days or weeks about green burials. It's gotten a lot of attention. A lot of people are signed up for, as well as other things. So we're looking to bring back a few things in person, but most things will be in a hybrid mode. The things we're thinking about bringing back in person are some of the things that are more interactive rather than just a lecture or somebody presenting about something. Our book clubs, especially, we have the Great Books Clubs that, if you remember, that Eric Estep started. It was a member of our library advisory board in years past, and that's still managed to be fairly successful and robust with over 20 plus participants. They've been during the summer months, they were meeting outside at Hammerly Park near Bolton Elementary School, and they've also been meeting at a pub. So I think we're going to be inviting them back this next month or in the coming months to start participating in the community room. It works a lot better when it's in person, and now that the weather's changed, and we do have these rules around masks that we'll continue to enforce, but I think those things make sense. I think from a logistical standpoint, we are seeing a lot of people liking the adult programming where they can experience it at their own homes by going in and accessing through Zoom. So I think we'll continue. In fact, we've seen numbers, I think, that are bigger and more robust than we did if they were necessarily in person. So I think if we do come back to in-person programming with adults, we're doing a hybrid model. Now, when it comes to things like this, library advisory board meetings, the state has changed the law on that, and now that everything going forward after January has to be in hybrid mode. So anything that is considered a public meeting, which these are, we have to have them in a hybrid mode. So whether we all come back together and congregate in the community room like we have in years past, we're still going to have this as an opportunity, at least for people to observe and watch on YouTube or participate in through Zoom, which also means that if you aren't able to attend in person, you can attend virtually as well. So that's the law now. So we need to, kind of be thinking about that. So I'd like to just, with that in mind, get a little straw poll out here. Also with the idea that the community, the city council and the planning commission and many other boards are now meeting in person. As you can see, if you've been watching council or planning commissions on television. So they've already come back. And so one of our logistical challenges, and I will tell you that, is by doing it in person, where we have to do a hybrid model, it's not everybody sitting at a computer screen like we are here, or a tablet or a phone accessing it. It would be, it's more challenging when you have some people in the room and some people away from the room, because we really aren't set up from a technology standpoint to hand everyone that walks in the door of our group to get a laptop and log in like this, which would kind of be how it would have to happen, or we'd have to, we're looking at some more creative cameras that we can use for this kind of thing. So it does make it a little bit more challenging. So with that in mind, I'd love to just get a kind of a straw poll on how everyone's feeling about COVID right now. If they're excited and really antsy to meet in person for these once a month meetings, or if they like the way that it is right now, or just kind of get your feedback on it.
Well, being shy, I'll speak first. Barbara and I continue to be very careful about where we go, when we go, etc. And so, I would think that we ought to continue with these kind of meetings until we get a clear signal, which is going to be after the first of the year, maybe even after first quarter next year, that we are getting close to normal. In the meantime, or in preparation for what we might have to do when we can meet as a group, is there any possibility that we could meet in the city council chambers that is set up for telecasting meetings? And so the technology would be in place. We would have to meet somewhere else. But we all have to come from somewhere to get there, and I wondered if that might work.
That's a possibility for sure. We've talked about that at the city. One of the issues is that there are many dates. Like our date is a Wednesday. This also falls under some of the times when they're doing planning commissions. I believe that's tonight as well. So we're competing with other advisory type boards. That are it's usually, so Thursdays are usually court, which can sometimes go into that 5 o'clock hour. Mondays, of course, is council, and sometimes Wednesdays, I believe, are planning commissions. So we have to, we have that space is in demand, and so it really would mean potentially changing our date if we're going to use the council chambers on a regular basis. Because I don't think they'll choose us over the planning commission, just to be frank. So that's one of our challenges. That would be one of our challenges in using that space. Anybody else have thoughts and ideas?
It doesn't have to be until the first of the year that we have to have it with the total hybrid, right?
Well, we're doing hybrid right now. So like I said, we're going live on YouTube. People can call in or, submit their responses if they wanted to do that. It is recorded so people can see it. And then our permanent record is a recording of this, but this does sit out there. It is on YouTube right now if somebody really wanted to watch us, maybe there are. So we are compliant right now the way we are doing it. If we decide to bring ourselves back apart, if we say, let's all meet, or some of us want to meet, we could have essentially a room with people in it talking, and then we'd have this going as well, or this kind of the Hollywood Squares type thing going here. So
Well, could
that's
everybody just use their cell phone?
they could again. It's again, do you want to, right? I mean, so my question is, do people want to meet together right now, or do they want to wait, and or a combination? Some people feel comfortable, some people don't. Rebecca.
Clearly, I am back in building, teaching in a school. So I'm very conscientious if anyone, I would love to be in person, but I understand that I am coming with a whole bunch of middle schoolers with me. A meeting in person with the cameras bring Janet just a little bit of challenging. Hybrid is like only one person's mic can be unmuted and there's feedback. And so there is, like, having done hybrid in person, it is really hard to toggle between two different audiences. So that's just my experience and background. So I am flexible, Doug. So I am excited to be back with everybody at some point when everyone's feeling safe. So.
Okay.
I kind of agree with Rebecca. More than anything, I want to meet in person because I joined the committee right as we went virtual. So I've never gotten to have an in-person meeting. So I've never met any of you in person. Well, except for you, Sarah, because I see you at the library all the time. So I'm excited to do that. But I do work some in the office and I work at home, and I work with a lot of populations that are a little more vulnerable. So I have to be kind of extra conscientious about that. And I know a couple of us have young kids too, who aren't, eligible for vaccination yet and things like that. So I think we definitely can work towards it. I'm excited for that. I just don't know if it's quite right. We're quite ready for it yet.
Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I second what they mentioned. I do have family members that have had health issues, immunocompromised, and so although I'm not really meeting with a lot of people in person, I am meeting with family members and would hate to in any way expose them. So I'm on board with what people already talked about.
Okay, great. So how about we do this? Let's readdress this in January, since we have 2 more months, and then if things are progressing, we can change that. We're Sarah, myself, Mel, and Rick are here every day. The library is open to people. Obviously everyone's wearing masks, and we're trying to be as conscious as we can, but we're here, obviously. So. And I do know what you're talking about, Rebecca. I'm being over the school district now. I go to school board meetings, and the feedback, where it's in person, where I'm there in person, and then there's people that are on the Zoom, and the feedback, and it can be really challenging. And I mean, you were talking to my wife about it, so I know the challenges you're facing, and my son. So we appreciate your hard work in this area, and know it's not perfect. So let's just readdress it again. I'm looking forward to the possibility of making sure that we're doing what I do think there's huge value. Obviously, when we're all together, there's more things that can be conveyed, and we're not trying to guess. Those awkward silences aren't there. You're waiting for other people to talk or not talk over them. So I'm looking forward to that piece too. So. We'll just readdress it and re-talk about it at that time. Matt brought up an interesting question that I forwarded on to all of you. He had a question about fines, and I don't think we've talked about that in a long time. So I thought this would be a good chance. If you'd like me to, Matt, I can kind of explain where we're at in the county and what's going on.
Good idea.
Yeah, I would love that. Not having been to that many meetings, I couldn't quite tell if it had been discussed before, but thank you, Doug, for putting all that in the email so promptly and really informed some of the research that I've started to do. But yeah, I would love to hear more about this idea.
Right. So So I guess to give you a little bit of a background and give all of you a little refresher, as a county here, our system is a little bit different than Multnomah, Washington, Fort Vancouver, which are the other big three county systems, or systems that are basically in the Willamette Valley, Salem as well. And that is that we're all independent, essentially independent operators. 2008, when we went out for a tax district and we got it passed just before everything went crazy with the recession. It was literally a week, I think, before the recession kind of all hit. So we got in good then. It was the concept was a 39 cents per thousand of assessed value would then go to each of the cities, which was inside those defined library tax districts. So our tax district is of course the city of West Linn, and then we have about 3,000 outliers. So you can think of like the Stafford Hamlet. You can see that there are other, like Martha lives in an unincorporated part of Clackamas County. Though we have these little islands in our city that are not incorporated yet. So we have about 30,000 people, and the way that's assessed is, like it says, 39 cents per thousand, which then comes to the cities through the state, through the county, and then that's how we operate our library. Now we also receive funding from the city as well for us at the library. We're thankful that we have that money as well. And then we have what we call allocated costs. And each city does it differently, in each municipality. In our case, it's basically set up as an allocated cost is what would it actually cost if you were to have these services to run your business. So we don't have our own HR department at the library. So, what's the value of the HR department? What's the value of our IT, which we don't have a library IT person. We have a city IT. And so these are all decided by how many computers are in the building, how many people are on staff, et cetera, et cetera. That's how they figure that out. And so then we have these allocated costs. So then, as a city, it's managed by the library director, library advisory board, giving advice to the city council, and then the city manager. And so in each situation, most libraries have their finance people have assessed a cost. So they're saying, okay, in an average year over the last 10 years, we've collected so much in fines and fees. And those fines and fees it used to amount to over $60,000, if I'm remembering right, what our assessed value was for that, Rick. And I think we've gotten it down to 40,000. And then, of course, we didn't collect anything for 18 months, so we had zero. So what that means is that's an expectation that the city's expecting based on our averages we would gather. And that goes against our bottom line. So that's projected revenue. And so they don't give us that money. So if we don't bring in that in fines or fees, then that comes off of everything else that we have. Now, the way that these others have been successful in doing it, Multnomah County, New York City, which you brought up today, is that they're all one system. So when the county or the agency that runs all the branches or all those various divisions makes that decision, it's a top down all the way through. Where here, it's an individual decision based upon a city, or in the case of the county owns two libraries themselves, Gladstone and Oak Lodge, which they run. The rest are all run by the cities that operate them. So again, it's like if we were going to do that, we would have to figure out where we would make up that difference in our budget. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge right now. And some cities are really interested in doing it. Like Oswego is one of the driving forces behind it. And they also have the most revenue of all the libraries in the systems, because their prices of their home, they're much larger population in their library tax district, and their values are much higher. So they have a lot more revenue, and their city gives them revenue too. So, and the other thing is that you can pay a fine anywhere in the state, in the county. So if you were at the Molalla Library and you had fines that you accrued at West Linn, you could pay those fines in Molalla, and they would be wiped off the books in West Linn. Molalla keeps that money, and that's kind of how we do it. We trade it across. It's going to change a little bit when we go to an automated payment system that we're working on with the county, which will change that dynamics a little bit. But the reality is that if one place was to go fine free, everyone would go to that place and get their fines for free, right, and get them wiped out And so it has to be a consortial decision how to do that. We are talking about it. I know there's a lot of here on my staff, and including folks on this call that are really positively for it. I think there's a lot of things that are that would indicate that it's worked well, and that it's also not that they're still seeing. I think a library director and library boards are concerned about, does that mean the material is just going to go away? So if you lose an item, you would still be paying for that item. If you damage an item, you're still paying for that item. So really what it is it's you not being fined for that item being gone. I mean, for being late to that item. My biggest concern, and I'll tell you honestly, has always been the kids, because in a city that we live in like this, the topography and geography here, as a child myself, many years ago, and I'm sure Tom and Jan and others can relate, we'd get on our bicycles and we'd ride to the library, and we would be responsible for our books, and we had an easy way to get there. Here, there are very few kids, if any, that are riding their bicycles to the library. Once we have a bunch of hills, we have crazy weather here, and it's just a different world now. So we really wanted to make it more accessible for children to get their books back in time. If they felt responsibility to have a library card, we also want to give them, it's hard to punish somebody who doesn't have the ability to get somewhere to return a book, right? That's really on the parent, not necessarily on the child. So if we can have them returning them at schools, if we can have them returning them at the various book drops that we have, the 5 in our community, we have food for fines. If they sign up for summer reading and complete, they get a $5 auto coin that they can use against their fines. Also, kindergarten carnival and other things. And again, I've also, since I've been here, given every single person that interacts with the public the ability to forgive any amount of fine that's needed to get them to a place where they can use the material. So we're trying to not be prohibitive in that way, but we've got these other challenges, if you will, to work at, because we're a unique kind of consortium where it's not one governing body. It's essentially 11 governing bodies that are kind of making some of these decisions. So I hope that explains it a little bit. I think we're trying to get to that point. I know we're in the county, we're trying to figure out ways, and I think if we ever do go out for more money, and I think that's more than likely to happen in the next 10 years, to change the library tax district to an increase. We're at the lowest amount of anybody in the state at 39 cents per thousand. I think there's a real need to potentially change that to keep libraries going. That's one of the things I think unitedly the library directors are looking to say, if you help us with that, we'd like to be able to then go to a fine-free environment. I will say one of the challenges that we have in this environment, one of the downfalls to it, and I'm pretty pro it, but there are some things that need to be concerned about. From an equitable standpoint, whenever we have materials being returned, the opportunity for most materials then have the ability to be used by more people. So one of the reasons we have deadlines on anything is so that more people have access to the materials. So as a body or a community, we want people to be able to access that material as quickly as possible. But we also want them to have that material long enough that they can use it and read it, or engage in it in some meaningful way, rather than it just be so quickly they just have to turn it back around very quickly. So, but when it comes to physical items, and before you were on the library advisory board, it was about 3 years ago now, we did a survey with the library, and we asked our constituents, our patrons, what's the thing that you value the most about the library? And it was really surprisingly, it was 95%, I believe, you all can correct me if I'm wrong, that people wanted physical materials. They wanted physical items in the library to check out and to use. And so we've really been conscious of that. But again, it's if you have 1 or 2 copies of something and you don't return it, that the opportunity for somebody else to get it isn't there. Now, I will say there's a caveat in there. If there's a hold for that item, then those do kick in. So it's not like you can just hold it and not return it, and you've been notified that there's 5 people, somebody else is waiting on hold for that item. It's for those materials that don't have holds on them that then could be out longer. I think, but the other concern is that it's going to start faster with the there's going to be a less amount of time than normally would be if somebody is being fined for something to return it. That's shortened, and maybe Rick, you can talk about what that is or what you've seen in other places around that.
Yeah, basically right now, if somebody has an overdue item, we start charging overdue fines each day, and it takes 6 weeks before we assume that it's lost and that we bill a patron for an item. So when you go to no fines, you just shorten that window. This is what New York Public just did, is they've shortened it. So I believe for them, it's 3 or 4 weeks. If it's overdue for that long, you get billed, and that, of course, prompts them to bring the item back. The difference is that you can get that money back as long as the item's returned in good condition. And so that really takes care, in what studies I've seen, that takes care of the issue of not getting materials back. So you're still able to get them back. You're just not applying those punitive fines.
Yeah, so for me, it would be the items that, you see that are checked out, or the items that you're not able to discover. And I think that's, it's like I always use the grocery store analogy. We oftentimes are sent by our loved ones to the grocery store with a list. And how often do we actually keep to that list, whether it's a mental list or a written list? There's usually something that's added on because, like, oh, I forgot, we actually need that too. Or, oh, that looks good, I'm going to grab that too. The art of discovery that happens in the library is you come in for something and you may observe something different, something that's been highlighted by the staff, something that's been, catches your eye, or you remember hearing it from. And if those items aren't there, that discovery can't happen. So I'm all for the more that we can get things back in time so that we can get them back so more people can use them. Because I think that's what the nature of what libraries are for. So though that's not a reason to say we need to find people, I just think that is one of the things that we all kind of try to figure out as well in this process. But right now, because it's such a large amount of money that the city is depending upon us to collect based upon our averages pre-pandemic, then it's one of those things like, okay, if I'm going to cut that amount out of the budget, I don't want to cut it out of the collections. That really means somebody's going to potentially lose their job, and I don't think that's what we want right now either. So those are some of our challenges, and again, it being in a system where we're all independent operators, rather than a system that can say, okay, we're going to go find free, and we figured out a way universally how to financially do that across a county system or a library systems, special library systems. Yeah, Rebecca.
Just quick question. Do you notice if the fines prevent patrons from coming back? Like I'm just curious, like from an equity standpoint, the other side of equity is like, how many of these people don't return to the library because they have cumulative fines?
Yeah, I think that's real. I think that is real. I would tell you that we've seen instances in my time here where it has been preventative, and we have been able to, once we've known that, to correct it quickly. And that's why I've given all of my staff the complete leeway to forgive whatever is needed to be forgiven, all the way to down to zero, to make it so that people it's not punitive that way. Now, that's a challenge if they're not in there talking to you, or they don't understand that. They're just like, oh, well, I've got $28 in fine, and I know the thing's at 25. I'm just not going to go back. So yes, that is a reality. And yes, we're trying to overcome that by, some of these other things, by having more places for book drops, letting people know that we're here to work with them. And so if you know of people that are in those situations, or you hear about it down the line, please tell them there's not a person here I'm not willing to get back to using the library, and that money is not the object. Now, I will say there are people that take advantage of that situation, and those are the people that I'm not as inclined to help consistently. I'll help them the first time, but when it becomes obviously you know what I'm talking about, right? That kind of thing. But we've had some really great, I know Sarah had a really great experience in the last 5 years with a family that they had not come to the library for a long time because of their fines, and we were able to have an interaction. She was able to have an interaction with them that changed that whole dynamic, and really, I think, helped that family immensely. I know it's one of the better moments I can remember in the library.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and
I know
Rebecca,
that
we
we've
met
done
them at the food pantry. I was just going to mention. So we do outreach throughout the community too to try to invite people to come in if they're not already.
I know that we've done the bring in canned food items to forgive loans. Do we? I don't remember that happening last year. Did I just miss it? And then are we planning to do it again?
Yeah,
We
we are
did.
doing it again. The reason it didn't happen last year, we kept the food people opportunity for people to donate food through all curbside and everything else was because there were no fines being accrued last year. So that's why we didn't do it. So nobody accrued fines for, I think Rick can be more clear on this, maybe 18 months, 17 or 18 months. It's just restarted back. And so again, the concern is that there are people that were somewhat blocked, that had a long period of time where they weren't blocked. And now they're back, those fines they haven't been compounding, but they still sit on the books as they were pre-pandemic. So we're trying to, work with those folks too. We know who they are. We've been able to get a list run. And so we're really trying to do outreach to that. So like I said, I don't want this to be in our library to be a fine, to be a prohibitive factor, especially, and I can say this, especially for our children, especially really for anybody, but I'm really concerned that we have this opportunity. And for the most part, if somebody's returned a book and it was just late, that's easy. It's the harder fines to forgive is if they've lost a bunch of items and now we have to replace them, right? So that becomes a little bit more challenging. But we're not here to, and we're also thankful for the people that do pay their fines. There's a lot of people that are just like, oh my gosh, I have a fine, I want to pay it really quickly, and I feel bad about it, but I know it's going to the library. I know it helps the library. So the point is, it really does help the library when they do that. So that's a good thing too. But again, we don't want it to be, from an equity standpoint, we don't want it to be unequitable. We don't want people not to be able to use the library because for whatever the reason they don't have fines and they have fines. And that's another reason why we've tried to create more places for people to get their books. It's also the reason why we started the lockers that are 24/7. So you may not be able to come in because of your work schedule, because you're working, you can still get your materials. So we're always trying to think through an equity lens and what's the best for our underrepresented communities, which we have here. Every community has them, and how we can best help them. So we have an eye to that, and hopefully we get to that day as a county where we can go fine free and not have that as an obstacle.
Doug, last question. Coming from the standpoint of getting books in kids' hands now more than ever needed, is the outreach that for those families that have those big fines, like, are there phone calls being made to them, like explaining, like, or is there like a wait for them to come back to the library to explain?
Well, I think phone calls have happened. I don't think it's universally we're calling everybody. I would defer to Rick and Sarah about that approach because they're the ones that are dealing with it probably on a more day-to-day basis.
Yeah, Rebecca, I would say in our interactions with schools, we have a really great line of communications with teachers and any concerns, that families might have about using library cards. We do try to get a lot of students' cards through their classroom teacher, even now. And then, sorry, I think Emily and I were chatting at the same time before, but we do like to go out to sites in the community like the West Linn Food Pantry, or when they're doing free lunch distributions too, just to connect with families, get to know them a bit, see if they have any barriers or concerns. Certainly families that are in the library, we are attuned to their accounts and try to triage that at that time. Another example, this Friday, we're working with Clackamas Parenting together to do a free brain boot distribution to parents of young kids. So we're planning to, have our children's librarian there and help people sign up for cards and check their accounts just so we can wipe anything off at that time.
So good. I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent questions.
I mean, some of the folks I know we've talked about that had the bigger, I think we ran the numbers or had county run numbers on those that had over $150 in fines. Was that right, Rick?
Yeah, we had a very small number of that. And I think it was even 100, which is where was it 150 where the block limit was moved up to?
Yeah.
during that. And it was a very small number of people. And most of those had were things where they had lost materials, large amounts of materials, whether that was on purpose or not, who knows. But in that case, it would, yeah, like Doug said, it would be a little different negotiation. When it's fines, it's really easy to, wipe those out because it's just a punishment, right? It's not something we need to replace materials or anything like that. So.
Pat's got
That's
his
usually
hand
where
up.
I'm sorry, Tom.
It looks like Matt has his hand up over there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
No worries at all. Really, really enjoying the conversation. And to hear Doug talk about both the obstacles, financial and otherwise, to making it a reality, I completely understand it. It's very, very illuminating. The the American Library Association resolution, I just located that this afternoon. Basically calling fines a barrier to provision of information services, and talks about the importance of, basically lobbying for funding support for libraries so that libraries aren't dependent on fines as a source of revenue. I mean, those are all very aspirational things that we can all do on our own, I think, to make change so we could work through this, work towards something with more of an equity and inclusion focus, because I think the last thing any of us want is for someone to be unable to use all of our library services purely based on ability to pay fines or pay damages. So yeah, I think it does seem like it's a major trend. And you mentioned some of the other, Seattle, cities on the East Coast, Chicago, Denver. Like it is something that it just does seem to be a wave. Hopefully we will be, not too far behind the curve and increase our inclusion and equity. But I did think of one or two questions. So obviously, even if it sounds like there's a fairly small number of people who lose library privileges because of this. And even then, they're still allowed, I assume, to enter the library, browse the shelves, and use the facilities at the library. But I'm thinking of folks maybe who, and others might come in to use the Wi-Fi. They bring in their own laptop, they connect, they can work, they can study for school, they can do whatever they want. I'm thinking of folks that don't have their own laptop. Maybe they need to use one of the public access terminals. I'm assuming if they don't have an active library card, they can't use the internet at the library. Is that right?
Thankfully, let me clarify something first. The ones we were talking about who were blocked, that $150 limit, those were kind of the extreme cases. So there are probably quite a few that get blocked at $25 of fines. And so we don't really have a way of not, most of those folks come in and we'll pay it down and pay under $25 and get going again. So it's kind of hard to tell how many people at any one time are blocked and feel like they can't come back to the library. But to address your question about the computers, thankfully, even if you're blocked, your card will still work on all our public computers. So you can come in and use any of our equipment. And yeah, you won't be stopped from any of that.
I want to reemphasize that I've yet to meet somebody that's walked in that's been blocked and walks out being blocked. Right? If we're aware of it, we want to work with them right away. I can think of a couple, but they also were trespassed and went to jail because they stole a bunch of library stuff. But those are really, really rare occasions. And I think that, again, we're trying to work within a system that we have, and we want to change that system, of course. But I'm really proud of our staff because they all have that, for lack of a better term, servant's heart. They want to help people and they want to take down barriers. And even to the point of where we're going out in the community and looking for where those barriers may exist and try to help along those. We set up at the Multicultural Fair a couple of weeks ago and had a lot of interaction with a lot of folks there too, and met a lot of people that we didn't know before. So I think we're always out there trying to engage both in the building and outside the building as we can. And again, I think it's great. Anyone can, we have people that come in here that don't have library cards, that don't even have a place that they would call an address. And they're here every day, and they're using the facilities, and they can get a guest pass to access things. We give them temporary cards. So we're trying to do all that we can to make sure that it's not a barrier. Again, I think that some of the bigger systems that have had success at reducing the fines or eliminating fines have been a holistic system. They're all encompassed into one system. And here we're all, like I said, we all work in a consortium, but we all financially are independent operators. And so that's where it becomes a little more challenging and convincing, administrations and others. And even if we were able to be honest with you, just talk to the city and say, we want to go fine free, we still are under obligation to do things as a county in that way. So it would have to be a county decision with all of the 11 libraries deciding that they wanted to do that and that they had the resources to do that. One just can't do it on their own in this kind of system. So we're all working towards it for sure. And I think that it will happen. And in the meantime, I think we're doing all that we can to make sure that it's not a barrier for our people that do come and use our library and people in our community.
So glad to hear. Thank you for clarifying that, talking about that. Thank you.
Thanks for asking. It is a question that I think the more we see it in you see it in New York, and you see it in these other communities, the more pressure it puts on us and our electeds and our other organizations that help with our budgetary process to come up with a reason to do this way. So again, we're a little challenged by the way this is set up, but I want to make one little plug to why the way we have it set up is complicated from a financial standpoint. But I can tell you, by having local control over your library, which we do here, we have a lot more opportunity to really address our community's needs in a real way, rather than being necessarily looking at a wholesale approach to things, which sometimes has to happen in these bigger organizations that are run large, many branches in a large city, an urban place. We're able to pick our own programs. We're able to select our own materials. We're able to adapt as quickly as we possibly can to the needs of our community in a way that gives us a lot more flexibility than are happening potentially in Multnomah County, Washington County, and others, even though they're doing great work, and I'm happy for them. But it has its advantages to try to do things in a way that best helps West Linn and the folks in Molalla, best help Molalla and Estacada and Wilsonville, Lake Oswego, and all the other communities in our county. And I think it's worked well on that side of the house. Okay, that's all I had. Any other questions anyone might have?
I just think it's a good job that you're doing, Doug, and you guys are great. I mean, you guys have gone through the COVID, taken care of us, and all you guys, you have everybody to consider, and you've done a great job.
Thank you. It's the staff. They do
I know,
wonderful
but
things every day.
come on, we know it's a teamwork, and there's no I in team, and you guys are all doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I guess we need a foundation update now, right? Are you through?
The other update is we are going to have a party. We can call it a holiday party. We can call it whatever. We're going to do it this year. I'm committed to doing it. It may be in January, it may even be in February, but we're having a party. We're having a party, okay? I think, Emily, that was the last time you were here, was at the holiday party. So
It was, yeah. I joined the committee and I came to the holiday party, and that was the last time I saw any of you in person.
we're doing it again. We're going to do it again. So we'll let you know what we decide to do. We're doing it.
Yay. That's something very positive to look forward to.
Yes.
Foundation update. Do we have anybody who wants to do that? Okay, Doug, you were there in the meeting. I didn't attend. I know there's a whole bunch of baskets coming up and they're going to be raffled and things like that.
Yes, so we're starting, the Library Foundation is going to be doing November 15th, I think, an online raffle for a lot of cool things that we've as a foundation have gathered to. We did this, if you'll remember, a few years ago in person at the Ale House, and we had our usually our Dolly Parton fundraiser. So now we're going to do it virtually this year. And I will tell you that I put together a pretty dang good bourbon basket with some really good bourbon and some really cool stuff in it that you're going to want to bid on, Tom.
And you did good bourbon at the Ale House one. I was bidding on that one.
I did have bourbon at the Ale House, so
Yeah, I remember.
anyway, it's going to be in a raffle format, so you're going to buy tickets for the objects that you, or the various baskets that you want, and there'll be more information coming out about it. So. That's what I know.
Okay. In a nutshell, that's good. Any board comments? Anyone like to say something? Happiness? No? Emily, come on, you're going to be part of us. It's going to be really fun. Don't worry. It really will. Okay, so then we do
Happiness.
happiness. Yes, it's one of those things.
Stop worrying, be happy, or whatever. We could all go out on a chorus of that. But kids are back in school. Masks are problematic, but we're making progress.
Hey, my husband just came back from a 3-week European vacation. I mean, that's about as normal as it can get.
Seriously, lucky him.
That's my husband.
If nothing else from this meeting, you guys know I'm coming in tomorrow to pay my library fines because I've been putting that off for a while.
All right.
So you know what? All those pennies add up, and it gives Rick his salary. Come on, we got to keep him happy.
If only my kids could pick one book and not 10 books that they read little bits of each time, I wouldn't have any late fees. But here we are.
I hear you. I used to have to tell my kids that they couldn't go back to the library because they had to find their books so we wouldn't have a fine.
Yep.
It was
Not right.
Oh,
Not a bad problem to have, right, Emily?
Not at all. And I am thankful every day for the library book drop off at the Adult Community Center because I can drop off at school and